All right. Well, hello and welcome. My name is Jane Cabrera, and this is Joan Van Orman, and we are Master Gardener Extension volunteers from Transylvania County. And we were tasked with being the project leaders for this year for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. So today we want to talk about it, let you know what it is, and invite you to participate in some of the events that we might have going on around Transylvania County. So to begin, let's start from the very beginning. What are pollinators? Well, pollinators are anything that helps carry pollen from the male part of the flower, the stamen, to the female part of the same or another flower, stigma. The movement of pollen must occur for the plant to become fertilized and produce fruits, seeds, and young plants. So this is a good review of fifth grade science for those of us who have long forgotten. Now, what are some examples of pollinators? Birds, bees, bats, butterflies, but also wasps, flies, all manner of insects are pollinators. And did you know that 85% of flowering plants and many global crops rely on animal insect pollination? 1 in every 3 bites of food we eat is dependent on pollinators. And this is funny. I've actually seen this statistic debated a little bit in some of the research, but I actually had my own personal experience with this year in my garden. I planted some cucumbers, and early in the season, I covered it with row covers, which it's kind of like a mosquito net type of thing, which kept out lots of critters. But the cucumbers started to they kind of showed up, but then they kind of died on the vine a little bit. And I realized because of the row covers, the bees were not able to get in to pollinate. Isn't
Okay.
that interesting? Yeah. So I actually saw a real visual of how our food production is in fact dependent
Yeah.
on pollinators. It was interesting. So, the story with pollinators, though, is that populations have been in steady decline over time due to habitat loss and climate change. But what we want to focus on today is the good news. And the good news is that research indicates microhabitats can be beneficial to pollinator populations and can increase diversity. And so when we talk about microhabitats, this is actually where people can participate with their own gardens in their own lawns. Even if you're in an apartment, plants that you put out on your patio can help support pollinator populations. Another piece of good news in all of this is that the public has actually shown a strong interest in learning what they can do. So that brings us to the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. And what it is a citizen science project. It was started by researcher Rebecca Griffin, who's with University of Georgia, and it engages citizens to become part of the solution. The census itself has 3 goals. First is to increase sustainable pollinator habitat. The second is to teach the public about the importance of insects. And the third is to provide useful data to research through citizen science, which is exactly what this project is. It's a citizen science project. And as I said before, that means all of us can be part of it. Anyone can participate. Well, maybe not just anyone, anyone in these 5 states. So, Southeast Pollinator Census refers to the states of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Alabama. So, when does the census take place? It's going to take place this year on August 22nd and 23rd. And so it's always the third weekend of August. So this year it's the 22nd and 23rd. Now, how they organized the census. Early on, I showed the website that, and I'll point to it again at the end, but the Great Southeast Pollinator, gsepc.org, is the website. If you go to the website, you'll see all the materials that you'll need. But there's actually a count sheet. You'll see a tally sheet online. And what they do is they show you the categories to count. So the categories are carpenter bees, bumblebees, honeybees, small bees, wasps, flies, butterflies or moths, and then all other insects. So do you know your carpenter bee from your bumblebee?
Maybe now.
You do now, right? I did not. But what I learned was that what is it? The bumblebee? I can't remember it now. Do you remember it? The carpenter bee has a shiny hiney. The bumblebee has a fuzzy rear. That's it. The bumblebee has a fuzzy rear and the carpenter bee has a shiny hiney. So that's one way you can identify your bees.
Yeah.
So on Census Day, there are 4 steps. Um, Number one is go and get your count sheet from gsepc.org, Great Southeast Pollinator Census.org. And then pick your plant. This can be in your own garden, this can be in one of the community gardens. And then get counting. So, what you want to do is observe the plant for 15 minutes and then mark your sheet. And the way you're telling it is you actually record every time the insect lands. So even if it's the same bee, if it lands multiple times, you tick that off on your tally sheet. And so the idea there is, say you have 6 bumblebees, you're not really going to be able to keep track of which is which. So the easiest way to do it is to track the landings. And then when you're done, you can share the results by entering and submitting them on gsepc.org. So when you go online, a form will open up on the day of the census. It will not be open before, but when you do your count, you can then go in and submit your results through a form online. So I've done a lot of talking for now. So Joan, how about in Transylvania County? What are some of the events that we have planned?
Great. Thank you, Jane. And this has been a terrific general overview of what people can expect. And I love how you pointed out some of the insects that folks can look at. And as you mentioned, the sheets themselves will have pictures and descriptions. So that's great. And we are really trying to get the word out. So we'll have lots of counts and lots of fun in Transylvania County. Just a couple of things that the team discussed last week was to have on Friday, August 22nd, to have a count at Silvermont, and that could, invite EMGs and others. So that's something. And then the Rice Street Garden is right there near the farmers market. So on Saturday, there's a few people that want to lead an event there for counting.
Perfect. Thank you. And that's great information. And people can keep their eye out on the transplanter and the Transylvania Master Gardeners Facebook page for more information and events.
That's
Wonderful.
right. Thank you.
Excellent. So I just want to share a few thoughts and reflections on this and my own personal experience. The first year that I moved to Transylvania County, I had heard of the census and I just did it in my own garden. One of the things I noticed though, after having done the census and really paid attention, is I started to notice the things in my garden. Of course, I had bought the house, so I inherited plants. It wasn't things that I had planted myself. Started to notice the difference between flowers that did not attract any pollinators or any insects whatsoever, and those that did. And it really made me start thinking of the importance of planting natives and how by having natives in our garden, they can like really give back to the ecosystem. And by the same token, by having non-natives, that I kind of start to have this feeling like, oh, they're taking up a lot of real estate and not really providing much to the natural world. So it really started to shift my thinking to become more interested in conservation kinds of issues. So with that, I want to close this talk today with four big ideas that as I became more interested in conservation, I started to look into different things. And some of these ideas came to me that I thought were a really great way to, again, frame our thinking around, how we manage our own yards, really. So the first big idea was the importance of caterpillars. And I had never really thought of this before, but people would benefit to realize that caterpillars are critically important. They're actually foundational to the food web. They actually transfer more energy from plants to other animals than any other plant eater. And of course, a lot of people, we're not necessarily insect lovers, but a lot of people love birds, right? And so caterpillars are really important to supporting bird populations. The next idea is less lawn, more life. When we saw that screen about the loss of habitat, a lot of the habitat loss comes from where we have, cleared natural areas for building our homes. And one of the things that became popular over the years is this sprawling lawn. Uh, but there's not a whole lot of life going on that lawn. And so I think the idea is not necessarily that you have to get rid of your lawn altogether, but maybe to limit it or to give back some of your lawn to a more natural environment. And plus, it's a lot less, well, I guess gardening itself is work, but you don't have the work of mowing going on. But it's something to think about to dedicate some of your lawn back to more of a wild pollinator friendly environment. This idea was really interesting to me. And again, this is an idea I had never even heard of. And it's the idea of keystone plants, that not everything you plant in a garden is created equal. So the keystone plants are considered native plant superstars. So first of all, they're definitely native to the area where you live, and they provide food and shelter for many other species. So, a great example is if you had the opportunity in your landscape to plant a tree, the recommendation is plant an oak because oaks support 557 species of caterpillar. Right. And there are other plants that are just they're superstars. They support multiple life forms. And it's a great thought to know that you can plant strategically in a way to have more beneficial impact. And the last idea that I'll share with you is leave the leaves. Again, less work. If you have a lawn like this one here, it's okay to just leave the leaves. They are actually providing shelter to a lot of insect populations that are actually living underneath there. There's insects that are living on those leaves, and they biodegrade, into the soil and actually create organic material into the soil. They don't kill your lawn. I can assure you that's my back lawn. We just left it, and the grass grows. Everything that's back there grows back up after. So again, it's an easy way to help support the pollinator population. And those ideas that I just shared, I mostly got them from author Doug Tallamy. He's the author of Homegrown National Park and some other books. There's some other books that are out there. I recommend anything by him. He's a wealth of information. You can also see his information at homegrownnationalpark.org. There's some great resources there. And finally, remember that a bumblebee has a fuzzy rear while a carpenter bee has a shiny hiney. And that would be the end. So thank you, Joan. You're 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 on mute. So if you want to say something, you can unmute. But thank you, Joan. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Jane, for that. And I just said we remembered. And thank
Yeah.
you for reminding us again. So really appreciate the presentation and the information.
All right. Hope to see you all counting at the census.